What's the last album we checked out this week?
Postcard from a Living Hell by Redhook. This is the Sydney, Australia outfit's debut studio album, self-released on April 21st. Postcard from a Living Hell consists of 11 tracks, clocks in at around 32 minutes, and is the follow-up to 2021's Bad Decisions LP, or EP. Yeah, EP. Because it's the debut album.
Correct. What are your feelings on the title for this album? I think there's a really good synergy with the title of this album and the album artwork, if you've seen it, which speaks very directly to that title.
Right, and I think I would also bundle up the song titles as well.
I think that's fair.
It all feels very, like, campy in a fun way.
Low budget, if you will. Sure. You and I are fairly unfamiliar with this band. I think we covered Jabberwocky when it dropped, and that is likely the extent of all the material I had heard by Redhook prior to checking this album out.
Mm-hmm. I remember liking that song for what it's worth.
Maybe I'm like vaguely aware of maybe having caught Imposter at some point as well, based solely on like I saw a Yours Truly feature and I was in.
Say appears to be their biggest song on Spotify. Any recollection of that prior?
That's fascinating. No, I don't feel like I had. I'm also respectfully, but only because there are other songs on this album that I adore much more. I'm very surprised that that's like the takeaway from that. I'm almost curious if that was a song on the EP that later made it onto the album.
I feel like it's an instance where it was released
like a fan favorite that like circled back.
Well, maybe, but I was going to say like not far from the release of that EP, riding like whatever hype. And it was like the first of what ended up just being singles for this album before it inevitably led to this debut record.
Interesting, because I would look at this album and I would immediately say, Jabberwocky is definitely the hit single off of this record, because it was released as in a sense that it was released as a single, and I think it's extremely catchy. I would not in any way have been surprised had you said their number one song is Jabberwocky. I'd be like, yeah, it's catchy as fuck. Why wouldn't it be?
I mean, I guess you can't rule out that maybe one day it will be, but I think at the moment, like, just the reality of it is, like, Say is their most popular song on Spotify. From what I could tell, it was sitting at like 9 million streams, which is pretty fucking impressive.
I feel like there is
a band who's not like,
there is a fraction of lore here that I think would tie all this together for me if I just had it like in my fingertips, and then suddenly everything would it be like, oh, it made it onto like a huge Spotify playlist, and then
I'm sure
it really took off, or it was like it had a moment on TikTok, you know what I mean? Yeah, like what is, somebody shouted it out who like maybe normally like wouldn't recommend a bunch of shit. I don't know, but because that's so interesting, because for me it's not the song I walk away from this album thinking about, which is really curious.
I think I'm right there with you. I didn't zone out by the time this album had finished, because I had a good time with all of it.
I would, but hope not.
Well, so by the time like Say ended, I remember the song ending, and I remember like another band kicked in, and I immediately recognized I wasn't listening to this album anymore. And I sat there and I went back and I checked the closer.
Was it Holding Absence?
It wasn't, but that was who I got for all of fucking As Everything Unfolds.
They were like my Spotify choice of the week, where every time I finished something, it was like, Holding Absence right here for you.
I don't know why. It happened last week as well, and it's why I recommended the song, because I had just been listening to it constantly after finishing an album, and I forgot which one it was, but like this week it happened as well. It was that new song from Hot Milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I did get that at one point as well too.
So
go ahead. Sorry, I think I cut you off.
To finish that story, I checked and I was like, oh, Say just finished. Like that was the end of this album. And I remember like scrolling through Redhook's Spotify page being like, oh, I guess I have to look out for Say because it's on this album and it seems to be pretty popular. And listening to it, at least for the first time through and through, like, or all the way through, it just did not resonate at all. And to the point where like the album finished and it didn't dawn on me.
And I feel the same way. And it's such a weird angle to come at this album from, like, because it's like we're having a conversation about the closer of this record just because it happens to be like their most streamed song. But it is fascinating that like it didn't really land for either you or I. But I think had you said 2 or 3 other songs on here, it would make so much sense to me.
Conversation's entirely different.
Yeah, I would be like, of course it is. Like, no surprise.
So let's talk about the full album.
Overall, I think this album's a blast. Like from start to finish. Like it's just like it's like 9 to 10 out of 11 just middle finger anthems. With like maybe a brief pause here and there to tackle a serious subject matter a little more seriously.
A lot of attitude, a lot of character, just overall too, like the vibes are pretty good. Like, you know, we're talking middle fingers up, but it's like with a smile on our face. Like, I just have fun listening to this album.
Yeah, this has got summer vibes to it in a real fun scream sing along type way.
For me, in a very specific way. And I guess not everyone will be able to relate, but at least maybe some of our US fans, Redhook for me sound like exactly the sort of band and the experience you would have where you're just waiting in between two sets. Like you just finished a set at Warped Tour for an artist you were looking forward to, and maybe you're in like the amphitheater and you're seated and the next band comes on, but you're really looking forward to the band that's going to be on the stage right next to them in 30 minutes, but you need to catch a breather. So you're just going to watch this full set. And it's one of those instances where that band just completely catches you off guard and wins you over in that moment.
What a weird backhanded compliment. They're the band you catch in between band sets at a festival, but I guess what you're trying to say is you're caught off guard by how good they are.
Yeah, and I trust me, I get that it can be perceived as a backhanded compliment, but like I mean it in a really respectful way, in the sense that like I can tell you so many experiences specifically at Warped Tour where like I wasn't familiar with a band. We're walking past their set. 15 seconds sounds good. 30 seconds sounds good. We have a place to be, but suddenly we've been stopped in our tracks.
Right, like they draw you in.
And then suddenly you're watching a song and you check your clock and you're like, well, I don't really have to be at that other stage for another 10 minutes. And you watch 3 more songs and suddenly this is one of your favorite sets of that day.
Yeah.
Like, can you not think of like 15 times that's happened at a Warped Tour for us?
I know exactly what you're saying. Like off the back of my mind, I think of a band like Trashbow, which is just like, okay, yeah, we've got 20 minutes here. Let's give them a shot. And then you check them out and it's like, okay, yeah, they're fucking good. Like, why didn't anybody tell me they were this good?
Different vibes entirely, but I remember the first band that ever happened to, at least me personally, After Midnight Project.
Yes.
This is like Warped 09.
God, I just feel like at this point, our references
they're
starting to get so fun. Like
obscure as fuck.
Part of my mind is like, sooner or later, referencing the Warped Tour experience becomes something that people can't relate to. So like now that you go back to like projects that like broke up 2 years after like a 2009 Warped Tour run is crazy.
They probably broke up that week. We just never realized it. But like, yeah, I don't know. This has a very, I don't know. It's funny to me. You just mentioned sunny, right? Like this is just a very like windows down sort of album. So for me, I immediately equate that with summer, which is Warped Tour.
It's very
eternally
fun,
in my mind.
Barrier in your face. You sing at me, I sing it back at you type thing. Like they're sing along jams. They've got a lot of energy. They're sort of like aggressive in a sense. There's a track on here, Psych vs. Psych, which is like the nastiest of all the songs on here. And it's got like this moment of an electronicore breakdown, something like similarly styled to like Electric Callboy. So
I guess that's also part of why I draw that Warped Tour comparison, is because this feels, maybe intentionally, but I don't even really think so. It just feels like weirdly throwback. In a way that it's like, okay, this is sort of like Breathe Carolina-ish, or this is very like early Enter Shikari for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's got kind of like the pop punk, but like more early scene versions of it, right? Yeah.
Electronically charged. It's just a really familiar experience that's done very well, and you walk away from this album just happy. I don't know. That's probably the best sell I could give it.
The features really stood out to me.
Like who?
Okay, so I like the Yours Truly and Sly Withers feature on Imposter and So You respectively, but it's the feature from The Fame on Inarticulate that really stood out to me. It's my favorite song on this record. That's the moment too where I was talking about, where it's like we slow things down a little. There's a little bit more of like an emotional poignancy to like this track, and it just feels like having The Fame on there was just like this perfect alignment of like, not even an alignment. It was like this deliberate choice was brilliant.
It almost felt like it should have exactly been the closer.
Yeah. And that's kind of what, we talk about, kind of like, say, maybe not really like sticking with us. I think it's maybe because it comes after Inarticulate that does it like a disservice.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that's just such a fucking perfect song for me.
I don't know if it's my favorite off of here. I think it's definitely my favorite feature. I like the approach on here. But I can agree in that it does feel like naturally what should have been the closing track on here traditionally. Also, it's just nice to hear from the Fame again. Like I will never turn away a look at the Fame. I
agree. The Fame feels like they're a band who's been like a burgeoning success story for too long now.
Forever.
Yeah. I would give this like a soft 3.5. This is one of those instances where it's like, I really enjoyed the album, but I don't know that any like particular element of it like really stood out above the pack, or anything about it really said to me, this feels like a definitive release from this project. But I really enjoyed what I heard, and there are some really strong songs on here. And I think overall it's very promising for the future of Redhook.
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's fully my style. Like it's not exactly what I'm looking for right here, right now, but I did really enjoy it. I think 3.5 seems really fair from a personal taste standpoint, and I think I'm going to give it that as well.
Okay.
But really do truly recommend it.